The year was 1963. The Beatles recorded their first album. The zip code system was introduced, and the average cost of a new house was just $12,650. Today, we're diving into the sounds that defined that pivotal year, songs that emerged while America was on the brink of massive cultural change. Peter, Paul, and Mary recorded Puff the Magic Dragon in 1963. Formed in 1961 in New York City's Greenwich Village, assembled by manager Albert Grossman specifically to capitalize on the growing folk movement. This manufactured origin has been a point of debate among folk purists who valued authenticity above all else. Peter Yarrow, with his Cornell University education, Noel Paul Stuckey, a former comedian, and Mary Travers, who grew up in Greenwich Village's progressive community, were deliberately selected to create a marketable image. Their first rehearsals took place in Travers' apartment, where they spent months perfecting their three-part harmonies before ever performing publicly. Some critics have argued that the trio's polished image and sound represented a commercialization of folk music's raw political roots. Folk legend Dave Van Ronk famously referred to them as the folk music Lawrence Welk, implying they were sanitizing the genre for mass consumption. Dave Guard of the Kingston Trio claimed they were folk music for people who don't like folk music. Nevertheless, they became one of the most successful folk groups of the 1960s, bringing the genre to mainstream audiences and selling millions of records when many traditional folk artists struggled to make ends meet. The group maintained relevance through decades of changing musical landscapes, performing together until Mary Travers' death in 2009 from complications related to leukemia treatment. After their commercial peak in the 1960s, they navigated the shifting musical scenes of the 1970s and beyond by doubling down on their activism rather than chasing trends. Their 1970 hit, Leaving on a Jet Plane, written by John Denver, gave them a brief renaissance on pop radio. The trio temporarily disbanded in 1970 to pursue solo projects. Yarrow released political material, Stuckey focused on Christian music, and Travers recorded pop standards. But they reunited in 1978, recognizing their collective voice was more powerful than their individual efforts. Their commitment to social causes never wavered. They performed at the 1963 March on Washington, where Martin Luther King Jr. delivered his I Have a Dream speech, protested against the Vietnam War despite FBI surveillance, and continued appearing at progressive political events throughout their careers. Peter Yarrow and Noel Paul Stuckey occasionally still perform together, continuing the legacy of the group and their commitment to social justice causes. Yarrow, now in his 80s, has faced controversy for a 1970 morals conviction for which he received a presidential pardon in 1981, complicating the legacy of a group that stood for moral principles. Perhaps the most persistent controversy surrounding the group involves this very song. Puff the Magic Dragon has been dogged by allegations that it contains coded references to marijuana use, with Puff supposedly referring to smoking and Dragon referring to the dragon or inhaling.
Puff the magic dragon, live by the sea.
Both the songwriters and the group have consistently and vehemently denied these interpretations, insisting it's simply a song about childhood innocence lost. Peter Yarrow has spent decades explaining that the song was based on a 1959 poem by Leonard Lipton about a dragon abandoned by his human friend. Wipeout was recorded by the Safaris, who formed in Glendora, California in 1962 when the founding members were just high school students, with a shared passion for the emerging surf sound pioneered by Dick Dale and the Beach Boys. Lead guitarist Jim Fuller, rhythm guitarist Bob Berryhill, bassist Pat Connolly, and drummer Ron Wilson, none older than 17, joined forces in the garage rock tradition of the era. Their creation of Wipeout happened almost by accident during a recording session for another song called Surfer Joe at Powell Recording Studio in Cucamonga. When that original song failed to impress producer Richard Delvey, they quickly improvised Wipeout as a B-side in just 15 minutes. The song structure was elementary, a simple 12-bar blues pattern played at a breakneck speed, but it was the drum solo that made it distinctive. The famous maniacal laugh and Wipeout voice at the beginning was performed by the band's manager, Dale Smallin, imitating the sound a surfer might make when crashing into the waves. Ironically, this throwaway B-side overshadowed everything else they would ever produce, leading to resentment among some band members who felt pigeonholed by its success and frustrated that a song created with so little thought defined their entire careers. Despite the massive success of Wipeout, the Safaris never managed to recapture the magic of their accidental hit. Like many artists of the era, they received minimal royalties for their work due to exploitative record contracts. In fact, drummer Ron Wilson, who created the iconic solo that drives the entire song, died in poverty in 1989. Over the years, different incarnations of the band have toured, with various original members coming and going. Today, Bob Berryhill is the only original member still performing under the Safaris name, keeping the legacy of their surf rock sound alive for new generations. The famous drum solo in Wipeout has become something of a rite of passage for aspiring drummers. In a cruel twist of fate, the distinctive cracking sound heard at the beginning of the song isn't actually a breaking surfboard as many believe, but rather the sound of a piece of wood being snapped, a perfect metaphor for how quickly fame can break. Even more interesting, the band recorded the entire song in a single take with minimal preparation, never imagining it would become one of the most recognizable instrumental tracks in rock history, or that its drum pattern would influence generations of percussionists. It's time to join the conversation. Share your memories in the comments below, and if you're enjoying this musical journey back to 1963, hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more nostalgic deep dives. Now, let's continue with more gems from this extraordinary year. Though written by a young Bob Dylan in 1962, it was Peter, Paul and Mary's 1963 cover that brought Blowin' in the Wind into millions of American homes, selling over 300,000 copies in just 2 weeks after its release. Dylan reportedly wrote the song in just 10 minutes while sitting at a cafe in Greenwich Village, though he built it around melody derived from the old slave song, No More Auction Block. The financial dynamics were revealing. Dylan earned just $5,000 from writing a song that generated over $1 million in revenue, illustrating the economic disparities in the music business. This relationship between Dylan and the trio highlights a fascinating tension in the folk music scene. Dylan, then only 21 years old, with his rough-edged, authentic voice, needed the polished commercial appeal of Peter, Paul and Mary to gain widespread recognition and financial stability. His own recording of the song on the Freewheelin' Bob Dylan album sold modestly compared to the trio's version. Meanwhile, the trio needed Dylan's raw songwriting genius to maintain credibility within the folk community, who might otherwise dismiss them as commercial lightweights. This symbiotic yet sometimes strained relationship defined much of the folk revival movement, with Dylan reportedly feeling ambivalent about the trio's smoother interpretation of his work, even as it filled his pockets and built his reputation. The song became an anthem for the civil rights movement, though some activists criticized its passive phrasing and questioned whether asking how many roads must a man walk down before you call him a man was too indirect when direct action was needed. Peter, Paul and Mary performed it at the 1963 March on Washington, cementing its place in American protest music. Today, the song remains relevant, with countless artists continuing to cover it as new social justice movements emerge, proving that some questions indeed remain blowing in the wind. The recording session for Peter, Paul and Mary's version of Blowin' in the Wind was nearly canceled due to Mary Travers suffering from a severe case of laryngitis. Desperate not to postpone, she gargled with bourbon and honey minutes before recording. Producer Albert Grossman insisted on moving forward, believing her raspier than usual voice would add emotional depth to the recording. He was right. The slightly rough quality in Travers' normally pristine vocals added a compelling texture that made their version stand apart from other covers of the song. I Will Follow Him by Little Peggy March. She was just 15 years old when she recorded I Will Follow Him, making her the youngest female artist ever to have a #1 hit on the Billboard Hot 100, a record she held for over 35 years until it was broken by JoJo in 2004. Born in Lansdale, Pennsylvania, To a large Italian-American family, she was discovered at age 13 while singing at her cousin's wedding. Producer Hugo Peretti of RCA Victor signed her after hearing just a demo recording. The Little in her stage name wasn't just about her young age, but also her height, standing at just 4 feet 10 inches tall. Her diminutive size led Dick Clark to lift her onto a platform when she performed on American Bandstand so cameras could properly capture her performance. Despite her youth, record executives pushed her to perform material with mature themes of devotion and unwavering love, raising questions about the music industry's willingness to sexualize young performers for profit, something that continues to spark debate even today. The lyrics declaring, "I will follow him wherever he may go," took on an uncomfortable dimension coming from a 15-year-old girl, yet audiences embraced the song with little concern about its implications. March herself has noted the irony that she recorded a song about following a man anywhere before she was old enough to drive a car. After her initial success, March faced the classic story of music industry exploitation that is befalling countless young performers. Her manager, Russell Smith, embezzled all of her earnings, estimated at over $500,000, equivalent to nearly $4.5 million today, leaving her nearly penniless despite having a #1 hit and subsequent charting singles. "I Wish I Were a Princess" and "Hello Heartache, Goodbye Love." The legal battle to recover her money dragged on for years with little resolution. Disillusioned with the American music industry, she eventually moved to Germany in 1969, where she enjoyed a successful career throughout the 1960s and 70s, becoming one of the biggest American stars in Europe while remaining virtually forgotten in her home country. She recorded in multiple languages, including German, and scored several major European hits, with songs like "In der Carnaby Street" and "Der Schuster macht schon Schuh." She married her manager, Arnie Harris, in 1968, and the couple remained in Germany for decades. She continues to perform occasionally today, particularly in Europe, where her fan base remains strong, and has worked as a songwriter, penning tracks for other artists including Bette Midler. Her song, "When the Rain Begins to Fall," performed by Jermaine Jackson and Pia Zadora, became a major European hit in 1984, topping the charts in several countries, but, in keeping with the pattern of her career, making little impact in America. The songs of 1963 didn't just entertain. They documented a society on the edge of transformation. If these memories stirred something in you, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell. Share your own memories of 1963 in the comments below. We're building this musical community together, one story at a time.